that Chris has got another appointment with people who are more interesting than us elsewhere, and he wants to go first with his budget report. But do people want Chris to go early, or should we have confidence in Julian?
Well, we have confidence in Julian regardless.
In which case, let Chris go early.
Okay. Well, let's quickly wander around and do introductions. So, colleagues, all the cleansing and social distancing stuff has been put in place. We haven't got any public speaking, that's fine. Please stay seated. No fire alarm expected. If it is, it's real and we need to meet at Queen Victoria, and sign out as you go. People are allowed to record this meeting if they want. Use the mics as you want to. I think that is it. Just to run through, apologies I got from Susie Horton, who isn't here because she has a working day she has to do for that. Should we quickly just go around and do introductions? So I'm Gerald Jackson, I'm leader of the council. Should we go this way?
David Williams, Chief Executive.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Julian Pike, Deputy Director of Finance.
Andy Biddle, Director, Adult Social Care.
Councillor George Magic of the Paulsgrove Ward.
Mr. Ashmore.
Dave Ashmore, Community Safety and Environment.
Hugh Mason, Planning Policy and City Development.
Kimberly Barrett, Cabinet Member for Climate Change and the Green Recovery.
Lynn Stagg, Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation.
Darren Sanders, Cabinet Member for Housing and Preventing Homelessness.
Chris Atwell, Cabinet Member for Communities and Central Services.
Jacob, do you want to introduce it? Yeah.
Jacob, I'm shadowing the leader for today. Pretty much.
Thank you. Jason.
Councillor Jason Fazackerley, Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing.
Sorry, we're getting pictures of Hugh instead of you.
Well, probably better. I thought you might. Okay. Councillor Fazackerley, Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing and Adult Social Care.
Ian Maguire, Assistant Director for Planning and Economic Growth.
Mark Pemberton, Economic Growth Manager.
Andy Bullock, Active Travel Officer and Safer Travel Team.
Tristan Samuels, Director of Regeneration.
Michelle Love, Safer Travel Manager.
Ben Dowling, Cabinet Member for Culture, Leisure and Economic Development.
Sophie Mallon, Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Chris Ward, Director of Finance.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, folks. In terms of declarations of interest, I need to declare an interest in terms of, I think it's item 8, Dunsbury Park, because of the Solent Freeport, as I'm a director of the Freeport, and item 10 about council companies. So we'll do both of those at the end, and Councillor Dowling will chair that because Susie Horton, as Deputy Leader of the Council, isn't here. Are there any other declarations of interest that people need to make? Nope. Okay. So, Chris, you would like to do the budget, and you have a 25-minute presentation to take us through.
That's right, Leader.
Good.
I don't think it will take 25 minutes. This is your budget proposal and council tax level proposal, as well as your New Start capital investment proposals for next financial year. I have nothing to add to the report, Leader. Happy to take any questions, but it is the proposal that is due to be considered by full council on the 15th of February.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to you and Julian for all the work you've done with colleagues to produce this. As always, having to try to make savings is difficult, and I don't think anybody comes into local government to try to cut services, but my thanks to everybody for working so hard. There are very few things in here that should hit members of the public in terms of reduction in services, which I'm very grateful. There's lots of spending on really important things such as the new pool for the southeast of the city, supporting schools with special educational needs requirements, supporting transport schemes across the city, investing in the properties that we own, as well as rolling food waste recycling out to the whole of the city and making sure that we keep the 4 community wardens whose jobs have been at risk. So I think it's a sensible and good set of proposals. Our job here today is purely to pass this on to full council for their decision next week in this chamber. Colleagues, are you happy to pass this on to full council for the decision next week? Okay, thank you. Chris, you are superfluous. Sorry, there'll be other places you would wish to be, Chris, and they will welcome you with open arms. But thanks, Chris, for all your work on this, and it's really good to see that sensible financial planning between both council officers and councillors means that for next year, for the first time in my 18 years of doing budgets at this council, we don't have a savings target. We're not expected to go and find savings, which is incredible. It's not going to mean things are going to be easy, because there are always pressures on budgets and pressures to do different things, but it does mean that we're in a better place than we could have been, and a way better place than most other councils. So Chris, Julian, thank you. Jason.
I'll just clarify, Leader, as being the fossil councillor here, the longest serving one apart from Councillor Madden. I think it's 1995, which was the year I was elected, was the last year that I can recall there was a budget where we could call it a budget for growth, and there were no savings to be made. So that's a considerable time period.
It is indeed. Okay, Chris, thanks very much indeed. Julian will be here to make sure that we don't make any decisions that you'd be unhappy with. Okay, let's run through then. Next thing on the agenda is minutes of the previous meeting. Colleagues, are you happy with the minutes of the previous meeting? Yeah. I just think for the record we need to say that we've moved the time of Cabinet till 1 p.m. as opposed to 12 noon for the convenience of the leaders of the main opposition groups, because both of them have a lunch break now, and so this is done to make things easier for them to be able to attend meetings. Okay, item 4, Andy, vaccinations as a condition of deployment for health and social care workers. I am conscious that things have changed a little since this report was produced. Andy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. So you'll be aware from the report that vaccinations as a condition of deployment was due to be introduced in the wider social care and health environments that directly serve patients, residents with care needs. I was going to run through the paper, but it probably seems a little superfluous given the announcement to the House of Commons last Monday by the Secretary of State that he would be taking steps to go through Parliament to revoke both this intention and also to revoke the vaccination as a condition of deployment in residential care homes, which came into effect in November of last year. So we had that verbal statement to the House last Monday. We then had 2 letters that came out from the Department of Health and Social Care last Tuesday and last Wednesday, one to the NHS employers and one to local government social care employers, to suggest that we didn't conduct any human resources type procedures with any staff that had thus far declined to be vaccinated in line with the VCOD requirements. So we've attended to those. We've halted our HR processes within the council. We're in a slightly difficult position because theoretically this regulation is still laid, it is still enforced, and until Parliament vote otherwise it's still there and comes into effect on the 1st of April. but we, in line with the advice we've been given, we've paused any HR procedures, and we've also advised all of our staff who would be affected by that that we've paused those procedures, and we'll communicate with them as soon as we have anything more definitive from DHSC. We've also communicated with our colleagues in the independent sector for social care in Portsmouth, as you'd expect us to, and given them the same advice. There were three items discussed in the Secretary of State's statement that we haven't clarified as yet, but they indicated that discussion would be held with NHS employers and with the Care Quality Commission as to the importance of vaccination and as to whether vaccination would become a condition of employment, but that wasn't moved formally, so we don't know where that will go as yet. Whether we will see this return again but in another form. And obviously if that does happen, I'll come back and update you. But as it is at the moment, vaccine as a condition of deployment from the 1st of April we are expecting will not occur, and the regulation will be revoked. Happy to take any questions if I can answer them.
Jason, do you want to leap in? This is your portfolio area.
Yeah, I don't have a huge amount to add. I mean, it's always difficult to follow Andy because he's always very comprehensive. So I would just add, I mean, I agreed with government policy. I have no problems in admitting that. I think the only thing is that obviously people are aware that how difficult it is at the moment in the private care sector to try and get employees there. They're hemorrhaging numbers. So I can understand there'll be a certain amount of aggrievement felt by those people that did lose their jobs prior to the government's change of stance over this. But as already commented on, it's this change last week has sort of made the paper irrelevant almost to some degree. But well, that's about it really. Not much else you can add to it. That's the scenario that we face at the moment.
Thanks, Jason. Can I ask, Andy, how many people has this affected working for the City Council?
Thus far, none. We managed to, my apologies, we managed to redeploy all of our staff when we were talking about vaccine as a condition of deployment in care homes pre-November last year. We managed to deploy all of our staff into areas where they wouldn't be required to go into a care home, but we did have one member of staff that we couldn't redeploy. In terms of the vaccine as a condition of deployment that would have been in force from the 1st of April, we haven't lost any staff due to that internally. There have been national discussions around numbers, but I can't really verify them, and we haven't heard yet from our independent sector providers as to whether they have lost anyone in preparation for this change in April.
Thanks very much. George, were you wanting to come? No, you're just buying a painting for £1 million. That's fine, that's okay. Okay, colleagues, are you happy with this? Because things have sort of moved on since then, but I think it was important that we actually got an update of where things were. Okay, thank you very much indeed, colleagues. Ian, plan development, management and increase in its capacity.
Thank you, Leader. Members, this is a report covering a number of different topics that we've brought to you as it seemed appropriate to do so based on the timing. One of those issues is a resolution on the 7th of December of last year at Full Council asking for some specific data to be referred back to Full Council, so this report will go on from here with your approval. That data, which is the average duration of all applications, the longest and shortest durations across the city as well as within each ward, is covered in paragraphs 4.16 through to the top of, or the table following 4.18. Overall, however, the report has a number of different elements. A general background on the current performance management within development management services, the backlog, the timeliness, etc. of determinations. A summary in 4.21 onwards of the business improvements that have been built through collaboration with your systems thinking team to streamline and enhance the efficiency within the department. And then at 4.31 onwards, a specific bespoke solution for recruitment of additional staffing capacity on flexible contracts to help us break the back of the backlog of applications which has been stubbornly remaining with us, which would involve the creation of a bank of staff on those flexible contracts to deal with the existing planning applications and applications as they come forward in the future, in addition to your establishment staffing. That does have a potential cost of up to around 45,000 a year, and consequently recommendation 3 paragraph 2.3 provides for that cost to be met from corporate contingency. So in summary, I won't go through the full report. 3 parts of the report: a general background on the backlog and performance in DM and the steps that have been taken to make those improvements, a specific recommendation to approve the creation of a bank of staff on flexible contracts to deal with applications, and the associated recommendation for the financial provision to meet that staffing. I'm of course happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
Chairman, I think it's important to remember why we are where we are. We had a triple whammy hit us. The nitrates problem, which we shall be looking at in a few minutes, caused a major delay in planning, and there was nothing we could do about that. COVID itself has made working very much more difficult, and also we have had staffing problems with a number of senior staff moving on to new pastures. We have tried various things to make the system work better. We went out to a commercial firm. This ticked over, but it has not made the situation substantially better. I think what you have before you this morning is ways in which we think it is very likely that we will be able to deal with the backlog. It isn't getting any worse. It's getting slightly better at the moment. And I think that that will continue and will also pick up speed. So I commend this report to members of the Cabinet, and I think it should be approved.
Okay, colleagues, anybody else? My question is, which council meeting is this going to? Because I'm conscious our next meeting is the budget meeting, and having learnt from previous experience, Mr. David Williams, putting lots of things onto the budget meeting agenda is not a good idea. So which agenda is this going to? I would hope March, not February.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's anything that has to go on to full council, but Ian will correct me.
If I may, the 7th of December resolution asks for specific data to be reported, so that's the element that requires it.
Yeah, we should endeavour to move it on to the next council meeting then, the March one, not the budget one. We should keep that clear.
Okay, thanks. And having been here when we finished a budget meeting at 3:30 in the morning, having started at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I never wish to be in a place like that again. It was not a good way to make really important financial decisions for the future of the city. Okay, Ian, thank you very much for the report. Colleagues, are you happy with this and the recommendations from Ian? Okay, yep, everybody seems happy with that. Thank you very much indeed, Ian. That's very good. Can we now move on to the nutrient neutral mitigation strategy, which is yours as well, Ian?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, again, this is a report to provide you, and it's in the appendix, the updated strategy, an interim strategy still, unfortunately, for dealing with the issue of nitrates, as the portfolio holder mentioned. We've currently been managing the achievement of neutrality for nutrients from new development through retrofitting existing council housing stock. Obviously, that has a maximum capacity. There's only so many homes we can make improvements to at a certain rate. So we have looked looked at an alternative, an additional process. We're not going to stop the retrofitting, that still will continue, but an additional process to deal with the increase in homes and the step change in the delivery of new homes in Portsmouth over the next few years. This new strategy takes us into 2024, maybe even into 2025, we'll have to see. It is a nature-based solution in partnership with the Hampshire and Isle of Wildlife Trust, who are taking control of agricultural land within the catchment of our wastewater treatment works, actually the lands on the Isle of Wight, to manage that, what is an existing farm, in a way that reduces the amount of nitrates and other nutrients that would be processed through into the water. That would be funded, that approach, through contributions directly from developers. So that's the new strategy. It's up and running in a parallel way, different farm, different process, with other councils in the wider Solent Waters area, so we are confident in its legal robustness and efficacy. We are taking within this an approach to take a position as a council, both as a developer and local planning authority as well. You can see there the necessary upfront expenditure of 3.75 million over a number of tranches to provide for direct mitigation for the development that this city council is undertaking itself, but also to provide necessary neutrality for smaller scale developments, so individual developers delivering just one home don't have to enter into complex legal arrangements with 2 or 3 other parties to provide this off-site mitigation. We'll be able to manage that for them. Overall, these nitrate credits are substantially cheaper than the market is currently offering. Other similar processes are £4,000 to £5,000 requirements per dwelling. This will be delivered for £2,500 per dwelling, so it supports the challenging viability within Portsmouth and ensures that this problem, which has caused hiatus of development in Portsmouth and the surrounding area in past years, won't continue for the next few years. It is an interim strategy. It does achieve something for the next 3 years-ish. We continue to work with partners and with government to look at a long-term solution for the nitrate problem. There are risks with this strategy. It is fair and appropriate for me to tell you this is taking a fixed financial position looking forward 3 years on the basis that this requirement will be in place for those full 3 years. We analysed within the report a number of different scenarios that would assess that risk and manage that risk accordingly, and we are satisfied that while there is changes in the market, in the approach, and indeed within the legislative framework managing this, they're not going to be up and running within the timeframe of this interim strategy. So this is an appropriate way to ensure we can guarantee nitrate neutrality mitigation associated with development in Portsmouth over the coming years, with the costs either put where they go to development by Portsmouth City Council to the capital programme that is our own development, or passported through to private developers where they are the ones undertaking that development. The recommendations are in 4 parts, in section 2 of the report, and of course I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Colleagues, anybody Councillor Mason?
Once again, I think it is important to note the context. The city is not of itself the major producer of nitrate pollution. This comes from upcountry, from farms, excessive nitrate or very high levels of nitrate put onto farmland and onto greenland inland. But it affects us, and therefore we have to take mitigation and develop a strategy by which our developments will be nitrate neutral. That might seem somewhat unfair, but it is what we have to do. And I think Mr. Maguire has outlined the 2 ways in which we can do this, that we can mitigate by improving the water efficiency in our council's assets, and we can offset it by buying land which has been heavily nitrate polluted, and we can stop additional nitrates and we can get credits from that. I think the important thing is we're trying everything, we're doing everything, and this is why this is an interim measure. We will have to do new things in the future, which we haven't yet thought of, but we will have to do this nitrate mitigation for the foreseeable future. And so I commend the report.
Thanks very much indeed. I think this is a sensible way of trying to make sure that we try to fix the problem which the government has created. My fear, Ian, is that the government will change its mind and say that this is unnecessary and we will spend £3 million on something that the government then decided we don't need. But I think the risk has to be taken, because it's otherwise you leave developers in a position where they just can't develop, and that's not good for the city as a whole. So I think the level of risk is worth it, but we'll just have to review after 3 years and where we are. So colleagues, are you happy with this report? Yep. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. East-West Active Travel Corridor Phase 3. Michelle, Tristan?
Thank you, Councillor Vernon-Jackson. Andy is going to present the report, and we will both be here to answer any questions following.
Thanks, Andy. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Leader. East-West Active Travel Corridor, Phase 3 of currently what is 3 phases. This is part of the local transport plan, and in line with the draft local cycling, walking infrastructure plan as well, LCWIP. And it follows the vision of having a people-centred, connected travel network that prioritises walking, cycling, public transport to help deliver a safer, healthier and more prosperous city. So Phase 3 of this active travel corridor runs along Winston Churchill Avenue, and it goes between Isambard Brunel Road roundabout through to essentially Guildhall Walk. And the recommendations we're bringing before you today in our report is that you would approve the proposed Phase 3 walking and cycling improvements, including in order of the priority that we set out in terms of measures and locations, and also a second recommendation that should we need to amend anything moving forward, make any minor amendments due to design timescales or cost, anything that's unanticipated, that we can take this to the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation moving forward as well. So the way that we've approached this is trying to meet where possible the current, the latest government standards, which is set forward in LTN 120, where we're trying to achieve a connected, direct, safe, comfortable and attractive cycle network, but at the same time looking for opportunities to enhance the pedestrian environment in this area as well. This is, whilst it is obviously walking and cycling, so primarily traffic and transport, the route that we're taking sits between 2 wards, Charles Dickens and St Thomas, and these 2 wards have obviously a range of challenges that we can help to continue to improve on through active travel improvements. And so these improvements, we feel, do have a connection to tackling issues around child obesity, in particular with health, assisting accessible mobility for all. It sits on the boundary of the clean air zone. It's one of the primary routes into the clean air zone, so we feel that these improvements would obviously help with not using polluting vehicles to come into the CAS, and would send a good message out that we are doing what we can to help people make other choices in how they travel about. And wherever possible, we're trying to make this as joined up as possible as an approach, and also we're trying to future-proof the measures that we're putting forward. So obviously we're always in quite a changing environment here, and so whatever we put in the ground at this time, we would hope can just be built on in future as well, without having to make any significant changes retrospectively or anything like that. It is joined up also in the sense that obviously it's the third of 3 phases, so we're starting over at Goldsmith Avenue, coming through Winston Churchill Avenue, Victoria Road North, and then over to this third phase. We had the opportunity to go out to public consultation on all 3 phases at the same time, and also 2 other parts of the South East Hampshire Rapid Transit Project scheme, which is called Route 801 and Walk 80, and that's along Goldsmith Avenue as well, and also along Canal Walk essentially, which also puts forward active travel improvements. So we wanted to go out to public with a clear, consistent, coherent message that was joined up and was as unconfusing as possible. So we had this opportunity to go out, and we want to continue along that vein in terms of going ahead with detailed design, making sure things are consistent across all the schemes, and also to procurement and eventually to construction as well. The report itself goes into detail of all the measures that we're proposing at this time under the budget that we have for this particular phase. I'll just highlight a couple. And
can you assume we've read the report?
Yeah, okay, I assume you've read the report, yeah. So just highlighting, one of the main things we're looking to do is put a new cycle lane along the footway on Winston Churchill Avenue as something that will be effective in terms of a measure, but at the same time following existing travel trends as well. And the report details the rest of the measures. So there's some recommendations.
Thank you very much indeed. Michelle, anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you, Andy, for presenting the
Okay.
report. As you said, it works in with our LTP4 objectives. It will work in with the work that we intend to do throughout the city centre, and it will provide the cohesive active travel network that we are wanting to implement throughout the city. Thank you.
Thanks. Tristan, anything? No? Andy, you couldn't turn your mic off, could you? Thank you very much. Okay. Lynn, or Councillor Stagg, sorry.
Thank you, Leader. Well, it's all been said, really. I just would like to reiterate, this is part of a much bigger plan to have a joined-up network right across the city. It's going to take years to achieve the culmination of that, but it's important. It's part of the LTP4, Local Transport Plan 4. And the main reasons for it, the government has said we must improve active travel infrastructure, which is quite right. And the reasons for that are to improve, cut the inequalities in health between areas, is improve health outcomes, improve air quality, because as has already been said, this is going through 2 wards which are on the edge of the clean air zone. And also, I think an important thing is improving transport, safety for cyclists and pedestrians, because a lot of our cycle paths are not joined up. They're very narrow, but by increasing the width of them and the continuity, in making it safer for people. And this particular area as well, there's low car ownership here, so a lot of the residents depend either on public transport or on cycling and walking. And if we want to encourage more of them to cycle and walk, we've got to create better, safer infrastructure for them all. We will be applying for further funding to complete section phase 4 of this, and this is an ongoing task for the whole city over the next 16, 17 years. So I commend the report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Anyway, Chris Atwell.
Thank you, Chair. If I may be just self-indulgent for a second. As one of the ward members for St Thomas, I'd like to thank Andy for the way he's engaged with us during the process. It's been very much appreciated, and on behalf of Rob, Ian and myself, we're looking forward to these improvements coming to St Thomas.
Dan?
Thanks, Joe. I'd like to support the improvements. Indeed, all 3 phases. I frequently walk along the entire route of the 3 phases, and it was long overdue. Are you okay?
Yeah, just burn yourself on the light. It's clearly a danger.
Thank you. We'll talk to the Health and Safety Officer later.
Yes.
The only other thing I'd like to ask Andy is confirmation that the team is talking to the designers behind the replacements for Leamington and Horatia houses, not least because there's a few things here on the lower priority list which might be of some relevance, like the Middle Street Junction and the Wellington Street quieter route, which may actually join up. So just some confirmation that's happening, and if money doesn't turn up for some godforsaken reason, there can be some further constructive discussions that end. Is that correct, Andy?
Yeah, thank you. We've actually tried to take quite a proactive approach with this, with those kind of areas in mind. Middle Street actually may push our current budget, but we wanted to get that in there now as a priority that we may in the end have to look further with funding from phase 4. But we wanted to ensure that it's right there now with those kind of developments coming forward. We recognise that the junction as it is isn't suitable for walking and cycling in particular. So yeah, we're certainly keeping that in mind and liaising with our colleagues who are dealing with those applications that will come forward as well.
Okay, anybody else on this one? Okay, are we all happy with the recommendations? Okay, thanks very much indeed. Because we've done the budget, the last 2 items are the ones where I have an interest. So Ben, could I get you to come up here? So I am going to declare an interest and leave because I have a conflict of interest either as a director of Portico, the shipping company the council owns.
Do I need to move, Lee?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
And a director of the Solent Freeport, although I'm a council appointed director of both of those things. So, I will leave you up to it. Ben, I will leave you my papers.
Okay, hi everyone. So, Solent Freeport, I'm assuming Mark, you presenting on this. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Dowling. So the purpose of this report, it's bringing the Dunsbury Park tax site, specific site agreement to Cabinet. So this is kind of the first stage of the Solent Freeport. In order to get the Solent Freeport established, we need to get tax sites through Parliament. And what the government wants is to have these site-specific agreements signed up to by each of the site owners with the councils for those relevant areas and the Solent Freeport Consortia Limited. Because this Solent Freeport is quite wide-ranging, it goes all the way from Southampton Water, such as ExxonMobil site, all the way through to Dunsbury. So in total there's about 9 different owners of tax sites. So we do need to have these site-specific agreements, so they're absolutely essential to kind of get moved forward. After this, we'll then go to the full business case, which again, there's an opportunity to come back to Cabinet and full council in March, because then the full business case has to go in at the beginning of April. So the reason for coming today is because the deadline for this to get this to government is Friday, the 11th. So it is quite urgent. So the background to Freeports, I won't go into it because it's all in the report, Councillor Dowling, but the main objectives are down there in 3.15. To establish Freeports as national hubs for global trade and investment, and to promote regeneration and job creation, create hotbeds for innovation. So basically, we bid for this as the Solent. Initially, it was looking like Portsmouth might not be included, but we lobbied very hard to make sure that we got a tax site, a customs site, and also accountable body status. So we've got the port as a customs site and Dunsbury Park as a tax site. So we're very well positioned. There's only 8 of these across the country. It was a really tough bid to get them, and you know we've had some work done by independent consultants to have a look at the implications of this, Colliers, and you'll see right through the report in terms of the different tax benefits in 5, 6, 7, right through to the business rates and so on, simplified planning, that the overall consensus is that sites that are part of Freeports and have this tax site status are going to be the ones that are going to be more attractive to inward investors, but equally they'll be attractive to companies throughout the UK. And already we're seeing companies approaching us because we've got a tax site in the just about to be designated at Dunsbury, so it is going to bring a lot more jobs. I mean, the basic statistics are overall we expect around about 26,000 jobs to be created over the 25 years of the Freeport, and 53,000 jobs in the supply chain, and about 1.5 billion of, sorry, 2 billion GVA to the Solent over the 25 years. So it is a significant amount of money. The rate retention alone from the tax sites will come up to about 570 million. So, and as I say, we got Colliers to look at this, and I think they've looked at all the kind of risk elements, because there are some risks to this in the sense that companies do have to sign up to these agreements, so it is something different. But the government is absolutely firm that unless we have these agreements, we won't be able to get this tax site designation. But I think the consensus from Colliers is
the benefits by far outweigh any of those kind of risks. So I will leave the report there, and the recommendation is that it gets signed, delegated to Director of Regeneration, the Monitoring Officer, and Section 151 Officer. Thanks, Councillor Dowling.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark, for the presentation and for the report and all the work you've done on the Freeport and your team. I think it's been really helpful. It's clear the Freeport will have enormous economic benefit, both to the city, but more importantly, the wider geographic area. Members, any comments, questions? Councillor Mason?
Thank you, Jim. I don't think it's possible to overestimate the importance of this item. We are an industrial city. We are a city which has long been right at the forefront of a large number of industries, especially high-tech industries. And this will, the type of benefits which we see here are the type of benefits which will attract high-technology, advanced industry to come to our area. So I think this is probably the most important thing we're doing today.
A bold statement, Councillor Mason. Thank you very much. Members, are we happy to approve the recommendation as written? For the record, there is general nodding in the room. Thank you, everyone. That's approved. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Tristan. That takes us to a final item of the day, which is all about the oversight and decision-making for council-led and council-run companies. Sophie, are you presenting on this?
No, I'm not. It's actually over to David.
Mr. Chief Executive.
So this report is before you in order to enable you to change the committee structure by which you oversee the council-owned companies. And originally we did some work on this. We established a subcommittee structure, so it's a subcommittee of the Cabinet. That subcommittee met, and one of its conclusions was that it didn't want to meet again, that it would prefer for this to be managed as part of the full council, bearing in mind that any councillors that have interest to declare would not be able to take part in that meeting. The report rehearses the legal advice. It's legal advice that you've had on several occasions. It rehearses how to minimise and mitigate the risks in terms of the various approaches, and there are two recommendations to the report. Firstly, to abolish the shareholder committee as a subcommittee, and to take those functions to full council. And the second, to agree that distinct and separate shareholder delegations be provided for each of the various wholly owned companies that the council operates. So it's a fairly technical, governance-oriented report. It is important that we have very sound basis for our decisions. We're not unusual as a council in having wholly owned companies, but we do have a number of them, and it's very important that we are transparent and open and clear in terms of whose interests are being represented at which meeting, and that's why we've taken so much trouble over this. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So just for clarity, you said full council. I assume you mean full cabinet. Yeah, thank you. So for members of the public benefit, anybody else watching this back in the times of history gone by, this is something where we've gone through a long process of looking at how we best provide transparent governance over the council's wholly owned companies. I actually chaired the committee which we now want to abolish, and this is something which we're doing cross-party and have had agreement from the leader of the main opposition parties, because we feel that the councils has to have clear democratic structures that people understand. And actually, if we genuinely believe that council-owned bodies are of such great importance, then they should be held at a level which the public can fully engage with, which is why we feel that full cabinet is the best place for this information to come to. So that's where we've got to. Any comments or questions from other members of the cabinet? No, thank you. David, we'd actually like to add a decision to the ones that are already written, which is that as part of 1II, in relation to each company having its own set shareholder delegation package, we want to ensure that going forward, whatever arrangements are made for each company, there will be an element of financial reporting to GANS to enable cross-party, cross-council and public scrutiny of that financial reporting. Now that may be different, hence the different and distinct for each company. So for example, Portico may need to do a very detailed, lengthy report, perhaps more than once a year to GANS, whereas something where we have a small percentage shareholding for a building ownership type arrangement or a building management type arrangement might need a much more pared down annual or even biannual type situation. Can you put that in a form of words, and does that make sense?
I'm absolutely confident we can put that in a form of words. It does make sense. So basically you want an obligation for a report to GANS on a proportionate basis from each of the companies.
I'm happy with that, colleagues. Very eloquent. That's why we have you, Chief Executive. So on the basis of the wording just cited and the 2 written recommendations, are we happy with those? Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. And end of meeting.